Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Process. I am going to be real and honest with you guys today, and I want to share something that happened to me earlier this week. Well, it didn't happen to me, something that I did earlier this week that helped me identify a pattern that I have been stuck in that I did not even realize was something that I do or did. So, I was speaking to my husband earlier this week about booking in a session with a personal stylist. I don't know if I've shared much about that on here yet, but essentially, I am currently working through a story around my sense of style that I'm super casual. I don't really like dressing up, it's not really my thing. But realizing underneath that what is a deep fear that I am not actually good at it or I don't know how. And so, if I was to put in 100% effort towards my style and it didn't turn out, that would make me feel horrible about myself. And so I developed this story that I just don't do that. And I don't care about clothing and I prefer to wear normal, casual, very casual clothes. But I don't want that story to be my story anymore. So my husband so beautifully got me a voucher to work with a stylist, and I have been putting off booking it in. And so this week, I really wanted to take action on that. And a few days ago, I went to him and said, "Look, can you show me where the contact details are for this stylist? Because I had a look and I couldn't find where you wrote it down." Now, as I was saying, I had a look and I couldn't find it. I didn't actually finish that sentence. And the reason why I didn't finish that sentence was because I stopped myself, because that actually wasn't the truth. I hadn't looked online, I hadn't gone through his notes to try and find it myself. And before I even realized it, before I even noticed, my mouth and my brain just started telling this little white lie. Now, what happened in the moment was that I stopped myself because I was like, "Wait, what am I doing right now?" And I actually said out loud, "Whoa, I just almost lied to you. That was weird." And really interestingly, in that moment, what I did instead was I took a minute and I sat with it and I went, "What? Why did I feel so inclined to do that? That was so interesting. I've never noticed myself doing that before." And the conclusion that I got to was, geez, I think that I feel as though I need to be perceived as someone who takes initiative, but then also follows through with the things I say I'm going to do. Because this is something that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks that I really want to book this in. And full transparency, at the time of this recording, I still haven't done it. I'm going to do it as soon as I stop recording because I need to. But in this moment, and this was only 2 days ago, that we were having this conversation, I realized I really felt like I needed to be perceived by him as though I had it together. I was following through, I was taking initiative, and then it wasn't my fault. It was someone else's fault that I couldn't find the information that I was looking for. So then I didn't have to take responsibility. I didn't have to own the fact that I messed up and I said something and I didn't follow through with it. And I think the reason for me why this hits so hard is because it is a value that is incredibly important to me. And it is something that I tend to get quite frustrated with when other people in my life didn't follow through with what they said they were going to do. It was a wound for me that if that was to happen, I felt hurt, personally hurt by them, as though they were maybe doing it on purpose or they didn't care about me or those kinds of stories. Those kinds of things were what I associated with that. So to me, this piece, this follow through is incredibly important. Now I can separate myself from that more and I can let go of other people's actions more. I don't feel the need to try and manage or control that the way that I used to because I've done a lot of this work. But the reason that I'm sharing this story today is because I caught myself in an almost lie. Like I really was about to tell this lie. And this highlighted to me that, whoa, there's obviously been other moments in my past where I probably have told little white lies. I'm sure all of us have, right? We don't want to get in trouble, or we don't want to have some sort of conflict. We don't want to expose ourselves for something. We don't want to be embarrassed. There's so many reasons why a little white lie can be used. And to be fair, it wouldn't have hurt John, my husband, if I had not been honest and continued on with the lie. But I would have been hurt by it because I am not holding myself to the standard that I know that I want to be at. And I'm not being honest with myself about where I'm at and the fact that I didn't follow through with this very small commitment, but also arguably a big commitment, because it is something that I'm working on and something that I'm actively challenging in myself. At the same time as saying all of this, a really important piece for me was being able to approach this situation with curiosity. This is something I talk about a lot. It could have been very different for me if I had had this same situation happen. I caught myself in the lie, and then I immediately started beating myself up. God, how dare you do that? You're so bad. You're such a bad wife. You need to be better. You need to pull your act together. Any kind of language where I am pulling myself down for making this mistake. That is not what happened in this situation. What happened was I stopped and I went, where did that come from? Why did I feel the need to take that action and to try and tell that little lie? And then that opened up this whole opportunity for me to reflect and to sit and think about why this pattern of behavior that I've obviously done previously without even being aware of it has helped me, has kept me safe. Because remember, our brains are always working to keep us safe. It doesn't care about anyone else. It doesn't care about how we are calling ourselves into a higher version of ourselves. It doesn't care about that. It cares about being perceived in a certain way so that we can be accepted by the pack. It needs to survive. And in order to survive, we need to be together with other people. And if we're owning up to a mistake or talking about something we've done that isn't in alignment with who other people see us to be, that could jeopardize that. That could put me at risk of some sort of conflict or being cast out from my community. And that is not something that my brain wants to do. And so I can see that and I can acknowledge that that has happened and that is why. I can also go into my past and think about my own identity and the way that I was raised and the stories that I developed as a child, specifically one that I've talked about many times on here, that I am a very intelligent person and that I'm at the top of my game, that I have things figured out and that I can do it by myself. That story is feeding into this moment, even if I have no idea that they're connected, because I want to be seen as someone who has it together. And someone who has it together would have at least attempted to figure something out on my own before going and asking for help. And so, because of that, and because I realized I was asking him without having taken that initiative, my brain switched into protective mode. Let's make sure we don't embarrass ourselves. And let's just tell a little white lie. No one's going to know. No one's going to have any idea that you didn't actually take those steps. No one was watching over your shoulder, seeing if you were looking actively on the Notion page for these details. But the key point here is that I know. I knew in the moment, as the words were coming out of my mouth, that I was not acting in integrity. And because I became aware of it in the moment, I had a choice. I could continue in the lie. No one would be any the wiser except for me, or I could own it. And I could say, look, that was wild. I don't know why I just did that. And I'm going to sit with that for a minute and figure out why I just did that, because that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And it was a really interesting journey for me to sit with that, to talk it out loud with my husband, to come to the realization that there's this fear of being perceived in a negative light that I don't want to have. And then I can go, okay, I hear you. I see you. I see that that has been a really big journey for you. And we're going to take a different action here. We're going to own up to it. And we're going to build some evidence right here in this moment that it is okay to make a mistake. And it is okay to have these blips where maybe we aren't exactly showing up as we want to be, because through this experience of owning it, I am showing up how I want to be. Because the version of me that I am becoming is someone who takes radical ownership and accountability for everything in her life. She owns up to her mistakes without beating herself up. Wow, that's really crazy. As I'm saying this out loud, I actually have this up on my evidence list that I wrote a couple of months back, that I own up to my mistakes without beating myself up. And I've just realized that this moment was an exact example of me doing that. So, how cool. I'm talking about not acting in alignment by telling this little white lie, but actually, because I had this whole full circle experience of sitting with it and reflecting and being curious, I was acting in alignment with this next version of me. That's cool. That's cool to realize in the moment as I'm talking about this. But this is the power of this work. This is the power of sitting with yourself and getting curious about your patterns. Because when you realize that you have a certain pattern, I'm going to be totally real with you for a second. It is no longer a pattern, it is a choice. When you become aware that you do the same thing every time this challenge arises, you do this in response. If you know that you do this, it's a choice. Because when you have that awareness, you also have the ability to change it. If you had no idea that you were doing it, if you had no idea that you had this series of events that would happen and you would have this certain reaction, and then this would happen and this would happen, you would spiral and you'd have this big anxiety attack, you had no awareness that that was a thing, then how could you possibly change it? You can't. You can't change a pattern that you don't have awareness of. But when you do, it shifts. If you find yourself saying something like, oh yeah, I always do that. Every time I have a hard week at work, I always find myself having a weekend where I basically just binge eat and I sit on the couch and I watch TV all weekend, scroll on my phone, and then I feel like crap at the end of the weekend, whatever. I mean, that's kind of like a big example, but it could be anything. If you find that pattern of, oh yeah, I always do this, you are choosing to do that because you know that you do that. You know that when you have a certain input, that is the output that you do. And so, in order to change it, you have to take a different action. You have to move from that awareness into the action in order to change that pattern. You don't have to. If you're happy with this pattern, if you're content with the fact that this is what you do, so be it. Continue. Great. You're living in alignment with who you want to be. But if you're not, if it isn't something that you feel proud of, if it's something that frustrates you every single time it happens, you have the power and you have the responsibility to change it, to take ownership, to hold yourself accountable, to call yourself out, just like I'm doing publicly right now, so that you can move into that version of you. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And a lot of times we feel like we don't have control over the situation, and we'll say, no, like this has nothing to do with me. It's just what happens to me. But everything in your life is a byproduct of your own choices. Everything. Because you can always choose how you respond to something. And I feel like that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. You have the power to change how you respond. You have the power to change how you show up. You have the power to change when you make a mistake. You have the power to own that and meet yourself with kindness. You don't have to shame yourself. You can accept it and go, wow, that really isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be someone that tells little white lies. I don't want to be someone that uses that as a strategy to get out of taking ownership for my shortcomings, because my shortcomings are my lessons. My shortcomings are my superpower, because without the shortcomings, without the awareness, you can't change your life. You can't change anything about you because you don't even know what you're doing. But most of us have some level of clarity or understanding of at least one of our patterns. At least one. You know, and you might even know what it is as I'm saying it to you and you're listening to this. You might know, you're like, yeah, you know what? You're right, Brooke. I always do X. Great. Now you have this incredible opportunity. What a gift that you have this awareness of this pattern, because now you can switch it up. You can do something different. You can challenge yourself and prove to yourself that you are the person who can take accountability, and you are the person that can change that pattern. Because you know what happens when you change something, even a tiny part of that pattern? Because notice in my example, I didn't execute that situation perfectly. I messed up. I started telling a white lie. But what I did was, as soon as I noticed, I stopped myself mid-sentence. And then I called myself on it. And then I started reflecting. That is my body rewiring its belief system in real time. So there will come a time where maybe I have the inclination to tell a lie, but I stop myself before I say it. And then maybe with a few more reps, I don't even have the inclination anymore, because I am the full embodiment of someone who takes herself seriously in this arena of taking accountability. So I'm working towards it. I'm getting there. And by sharing this story on here, I'm cementing it further that I take accountability. I don't need to be perceived as perfect in order to be acceptable. I don't need to. I am who I am. I am taking accountability, and I am shifting myself in real time every time I get a rep in. So what an incredible opportunity if you have this awareness to change something about this pattern. Because what I was trying to say with this whole point is that if you change something about the pattern in one area, now you have evidence that you can change something about yourself. You can fundamentally change who you are. And you know what that opens up? Opportunities to do it in other areas. Because the more that I have done this work, the more that I have found myself noticing these patterns, the more that other patterns have become apparent to me, just like in this example with the lie. And now I can turn and face these parts of myself with so much kindness and so much openness to go, where is this coming from? What is the protective mechanism here? What is the purpose of me doing this? Oh, it's stopping me from being embarrassed. It's stopping me from getting in a fight with my husband about not following through. And now, with that information, I can now take that and move forward in a different way, knowing that every single time I do it, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to get clearer. And every time I am moving in alignment with who I want to be. And I think that is the most incredible gift that you can give yourself. But you have to be willing to see it, to call yourself on it, and then to call yourself into being this better version of you. I know you can do it. I believe in you. You're amazing. And that's all I have for you today. Whoops, just hit the microphone. If you got value from this episode, I would love to hear your thoughts. You can reach out to me on Instagram at HeyBrookeDawson. You can also leave a comment directly on this YouTube video. If you would love to leave a review for me on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, that would be so incredible. It means the absolute world to me. I am so grateful for every single one of you listening to this and for coming along this journey, for being part of the process. And I'm just so excited to do this with you. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day. Have an incredible rest of your day, whatever it is that you're doing. And I cannot wait to see you in the next one.